to explain the major endocrine glands, describe important hormones released by the endocrine glands and their impact on behavior. So, hormones are organic chemicals. Now, even before we understand about hormonal basis of behavior, we need to know what hormones are. So, hormones are organic chemical messengers produced and released by specialized glands called endocrine glands. Okay. So, when you look at the page number 69, you will get a little more better understanding, right? So the various glands in the human body releases different chemical substances necessary for growth and maintenance functions. The glands are two types. One type of glands secrete chemical substances which are carried to different parts of the body through tubes or ducts. They are called the duct glands or exocrine glands. The tear glands, salivary glands, belong to this category. The other type of glands delivers the secretion directly into the bloodstream without the help of the ducts or the tubes. These glands are known as the ductless gland or the endocrine glands. Okay, so even as I told you before, understanding hormone, they are chemical substances released by these glands. Okay, they are known as hormones. A set of endocrine glands in various parts of the body that releases hormones in the bloodstream to influence both physiological and emotional functioning is known as the endocrine system. So just look at page number 70. You have a beautiful depiction of the endocrine glands, which is labeled very neatly, right? When you look at it, you will be able to understand better. The endocrine system functions towards the maintenance of the chemical equilibrium of the body. The chemical equilibrium may be disturbed either by overactivity or underactivity of the endocrine glands. Imbalance in hormones can result in psychological abnormality or physical abnormality, or sometimes even both. The former involves in the temperament, intelligence, and emotional state, while the latter involves in the appearance of secondary sexual characteristics, changes in the rate, growth, etc. The endocrine system is under control of the central nervous system. The hormones released by the endocrine influence a varieties of function. If you look at page number 70, you will find a table, right? In this table, they have given you very clearly the major endocrine glands, right? With the name of the gland and the hormone that it releases and what are the functions. Okay, so you'll find very easy for you to understand. You take each one of it, which is again explained in details. Now let us begin with the serial number 1, which says that is pituitary anterior pituitary, right? So this is a gland, pituitary gland, which is called in simple ways, right? And what is the hormone that is releasing? The hormone that it releases is called ACTH, that is adrenocorticotropic hormone, right? And what is the function of this ACTH? The function of the ACTH is to stimulate hormone secretion by the adrenal cortex. Then we have, right? And then another function is also to stimulate the thyroid hormones. So thyroid stimulating hormone, right? So which stimulates hormone secretion of the thyroid gland. And then we have the gonadotropic hormone, which regulates the gonad, that is the testes and the ovaries. And then we have the growth hormones, that is prolactin, which stimulates growth, stimulates the milk production in the nursing woman, right? And posterior pituitary. Okay, so antidiuretic hormone, which is vasopressin, that promotes water retention by the kidneys. And there is oxytocin, okay, which stimulates contraction of the uterus during the childbirth. Okay, so when you look at the pituitary gland and you see the kind of hormones, it is releasing all these hormones that are mentioned here, like the ACTH, the TSH, the gonadotropic hormone, the growth hormone, prolactin, and the posterior hormone, right? And you see the functions that it does in our bodies. The next is the thyroid, right? So thyroxine. The thyroxine hormone regulates metabolism and growth. Okay, voice is not audible. Is it audible now?
It is audible, ma'am.
It's audible? Okay. Because somebody messaged that it is not audible. Fine. So far you are with me. I'm on page number 71 now. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, page number 71. Okay, so I'm reading the table that speaks about the various glands, the hormones it releases, and the functions those glands have, right? Another is the parathyroid hormone, right, which regulates calcium levels in the blood. And the adrenal cortex, that is aldosterone hormone, that regulates salt and water balance in the body. And there's cortisol, that influences body's response to stress, stimulate glucose production, adrenal medulla, epinephrine and norepinephrine. Okay, that increases arousal of blood pressure, heart rate, and stressful situation. And then the number 5 that shows here is the pancreas. Pancreas, you have insulin production, right? Pancreas releases the insulin production, glucagon, which decreases the blood sugar or increases the blood sugar. Then we have the gonads, that is the testes in males, and ovaries in females, right? The testosterone hormone that regulates the development of the male reproductive system, production of hormones. Second is sexual characteristics associated with the sexual development. And the ovaries, as we know, is the production in the women's body, that is the estrogen, right? That regulates the development of female reproductive system and secondary sexual characteristics. And the progesterone that regulates changes in the uterus to maintain pregnancy, right? And then here we have a little more information on the pituitary gland. How is it, right? You can see the diagram here, right? It is very clearly given and it is also labeled. So one of the major endocrine gland is the pituitary. The gland is a pea-shaped structure located just below the hypothalamus, right? That is somewhere closer to the neck region. The nervous system exerts its influence on the endocrine system through the pituitary gland. The pituitary is called the master gland because it produces different hormones and controls the activity of the other endocrine glands. The pituitary is divided into two parts, anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary. The posterior pituitary is made up of neural tissues, and it is the part of the gland that receives direct input from the brain. This input leads to the release of two hormones from the posterior pituitary and the antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. Antidiuretic hormone regulates the reabsorption of the water by kidneys, thereby maintain internal water balance. The oxytocin stimulates the contraction of the uterus during the childbirth. The anterior portion of the pituitary receives input directly from the brain by the way of releasing hormones. These releasing hormones causes anterior pituitary to release a variety of other hormones. As we have already seen before, it is very clearly mentioned about the different hormones that has been produced. Okay, and it is given here. Okay, so you please read up the page number 72 and you will get a lot more details about how these hormones influences our body, influences our behavior. So it's just not the nerves that influences, but it's also the hormones, right? Then there are some detailed study on the thyroid glands, parathyroid glands, adrenal glands, and pancreas and gonads. So rest of the pages, that is from page 73 to 74, is all the details given about the different glands and major glands and how it is functioning. Okay. So if you look at page number 73, there are some questions. See if you can answer this question. What are the major endocrine glands, right? And what are the types of glands, right? It is all given on page number 69, right? It talks about the duct gland, the ductless gland, etc. Right? And what are the important hormones released by the anterior pituitary glands, right? It is the ACTH, TSH, gonad, and other growth hormones and all. So all the answers are very easily given. So kindly read the book. Okay, so now we move on to the thyroid glands. What is the thyroid gland? Thyroid gland is located on either side of the larynx near the neck region. Are you with me? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So the thyroid gland is located somewhere here near the neck. That is either side of the neck, larynx, near the neck region of our body. The main hormones released by the thyroid gland is called the thyroxine. The subnormal production of thyroxine creates a condition called hypothyroidism, right? Characterized by sluggishness, inertia, and dullness. The overactivity of the thyroid glands results in hyperthyroidism. That is characterized by exceedingly nervousness, overactivity, and restlessness. In children, severe thyroid deficiencies are known to produce a condition called cretinism, which is characterized by marked reduction in the brain size and mental ability. In adults, the malfunctioning of the thyroid produces swelling in front of the neck, a condition known as goiter. Research evidence suggests that a connection may exist between malfunctioning of thyroid and premenstrual syndrome, that is the PMS. PMS is characterized by increased irritability and moodiness shortly before the onset of menstruation. Women with PMS have some sort of thyroid problems, and their conditions improved when supplement thyroxine was administered. Okay, so you have basically some understanding of thyroid, right? Which is a very common now among the youngsters, right? Hypothyroidism is very, very common, where we see a lot of people suffering from, especially women, right? As they have already given us the kind of symptoms of this hypothyroidism, sluggishness, dullness, that is. And also it is related to weight gain, right? Hypothyroidism is related to weight gain. It is related to getting tired too quickly, right? All that is mentioned here, right? And then overproduction of this hormone releases to hyperthyroidism. Hyperthyroidism is again linked to loss of weight, no? Where the person feels anemic, person feels weak, and all this. Okay. And then in children, it gives rise to a swelling in front of the, in children, it shows in the reduction of the brain size, right? And then when we are talking about the other malfunctioning of the thyroid, that is a huge swelling in the neck region. That is called the goiter. Sometimes it can also turn cancerous. Okay. Now we move on to the parathyroid gland. What is parathyroid glands? They are located in the neck just behind the thyroid glands. As we know, the thyroid glands is located in the neck, right? In between the larynx. This parathyroid gland is just behind the thyroid gland. The 4 parathyroid glands secrete a hormone called parathyroid hormone or parathormone hormone. The hormone plays a role in regulating blood calcium levels, helps the blood maintain adequate calcium in the bloodstream to protect bone health, right? Too much production of the parathyroid hormone causes a condition known as hypercalcemia, right? Which increases the blood calcium levels. This does not cause obvious symptoms in mild cases. But if the hormone level rises too high, it can cause digestive upset, constipation, lethargy, weakness, joint pain, and excessive thirst. Too little of parathyroid hormone can cause a rare condition called hypoparathyroidism, right? Which leads to low blood calcium level. And this can be treated easily by giving the calcium tablets. Okay. So this is about parathyroid glands. And then we move to the adrenal glands. Now, what are these adrenal glands and where are they located? Adrenal glands are located on the top of each kidney, right? The inner core of the adrenal gland is called the adrenal medulla, and the outer layer is called adrenal cortex. The adrenal cortex releases 2 types of hormones, that is hormone aldosterone and cortisol. Now, aldosterone helps to maintain the body's salts and water level, which in turn regulates blood pressure. Without aldosterone, the kidney loses excessive amounts of salt and it leads to severe dehydration. The cortisol is involved in preparing the body to stress situation and it stimulates a glucose metabolism. It stimulates the liver to increase the blood sugar level to give the body the required energy for quick action under condition of stress, right? It is a lattice effect that prompts both the amateur and the professional athlete to supplement the body's natural supply of corticoids or steroids, right? Which is very common among the athletes who take steroids, right? Yeah, and then adrenal medulla secrete two types of hormones, namely androgen and non-androgen, also known as epinephrine and non-epinephrine. These hormones are responsible for all physiological changes associated with the stress response, the so-called flight or the fight response, which we study in the detail when we talk about stress, right? How stress impacts and how our body responds in flight or fight mode. Either we fight it or we leave flight, right? Or we use flight to deal with the stress. Excess production of cortisol may lead to Cushing's syndrome. What is that now? It is characterized by blood pressure, marks on the skin, muscle weakness, osteoporosis, right? Which is the, which is osteoporosis, is that related to the how the bone starts, it's related to the bone, and the bone starts reducing its size. Like, as you age, especially for women, osteoporosis is very common, right? So it affects the bone. Excessive facial hair and irregular periods in women. Deficient secretion of corticoid results in Addison's disease. It is characterized by increased fatigue, loss of appetite, anemia, irritability, restlessness, weakness, and darkening of the skin. Okay, so you can see here the pictures given about the adrenal gland. We move on to the pancreas, right? Now, another endocrine gland that is not so significant from the point of view of psychology is the pancreas. Now, where is the pancreas located? It is located below the stomach at the end of the duodenum. What is this duodenum? It's a first part of small intestine. Within the pancreas, there is a structure called islets and Langerhans. The hormone releasing cells are located in the islets of Langerhans. The islets and Langerhans consists of two types of cells, that is the alpha cells and the beta cells. Alpha cells produces a hormone called glucagon. Glucagon increases the sugar levels in the blood. Beta cells produces a hormone called insulin. Insulin lowers the glucose level in the blood. Deficiency in insulin produces due to malfunctioning of the beta cells, which leads to a condition called the diabetes, which is very, very common, right? I am on page number 75. If you are just joining in, please be aware, I am on page number 79. We are talking about hormone, right? And its impact on behavior of the body, right? Okay, so next we move on to number 6, that is the gonads. Now, gonads are the vital sexual development and reproduction. The gonads or sex organs in the males are called testes, and in the females, the important sex organs are ovaries. The male gonad releases the sex hormones called androgen or testosterone. The testosterone regulates the development of the male reproductive system. Secondary sex characteristics and sex drives. The testes produce sperms for sexual reproduction. The female gonads secrete estrogen and proestrogen. Estrogen facilitates the puberty, right? That is, you see, puberty is something that happens among the adolescent, the growing up stage, right? Regulates the development of the female reproductive system and secondary sex characteristics. Proestrogen regulates necessary changes in the uterus to maintain pregnancy. Both proestrogen and estrogen control the fertility and menstrual cycle. The ovaries produces and release ova or the egg for sexual reproductions. The hormones of the endocrine system and the neurotransmitters of the neuron perform similar function, but the speed and the mode of transmissions are quite different. The neurotransmitters carries messages between adjacent neuron to a few milliseconds, and its effects are highly localized. In contrast, a hormone once released must travel a long distance in the body to reach its target size via the bloodstream. It is a much slower process. Despite these differences, some of these chemical messages serve both the function. Norepinephrine, for example, acts as a neurotransmitter when it is released by neurons. and as a hormone when released by the adrenal glands. So here we close this more about hormonal and its impact on the behavior of the person. You have some questions here. You can check your progress, right? What are the sex hormones released in men and women is a question that is given here, right? So you talk about what are the sex hormones produced in men, that is androgen and testosterone, and in the female, the estrogen and the progesterone. You refer to page number 5 for this answer and you'll get all the information, right, in the section of gonads. Then you have another question, discuss what are the hormonal dysfunction that leads to diabetes. You talk about, go to this number 5, that is about the pancreas that releases insulin, right, and how deficiency of insulin causes, different problems. Okay, so, and you also have the summary here, right? When you go through the summary, you'll have a basic understanding about how the hormones affect the behavior. Then you have also the model question papers, right? Go through these, right? Checking your progress, model answers are also there. Very, very clearly given. There's nothing for you to be worried about. See, some of the technical terms, we cannot do anything about it. We just have to learn to use it as it is, right? So when we are especially addressing the answers, right? You have model question answers there down. Explain the role of the adrenal glands in the human behavior, right? So you check, which is on page number 74. You have described the importance of gonads in human body, which is again given in the heading on gonads on page 75. And then what are the major endocrine glands, right? You go to again page 69 and then you'll find all the answers to your question, right? Then there are also a question that you have to write 20 lines, which a lot of information is already here. Yeah, why pituitary gland is called gland, and discuss the importance of the, right? You again go to page number 71 here, defining endocrine system and discuss major endocrine glands. You read 69 to 70, you will get all the information about here. And then you have a glossary here, right? In simple ways to understand endocrine glands, a gland that secretes its hormone, so ducts or tube, okay? Like the different terminologies is used. Kindly read up so that you have a better understanding. Okay, so now we move towards the unit number 6. Are you with me till here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Okay, so we go to the, yeah, sorry. Somebody said something.
Ma'am, only it has explained about the functioning and everything, but about how it affects our behavior, like.
It is given, no, see, all the symptoms, each hormone that is producing, for example, you're talking about the thyroid hormone, like producing thyroxine, it is impacting the behavior and the body, right? In the body, there's a lot of symptoms are there. For example, weight gain, I already spoken about you, sluggishness, right? Tiredness, right? All these are physical symptoms. The other symptoms of the thyroid is also your irritability, moodiness, all this. Okay. So like that, each hormone is given you symptoms of how it is physiologically affecting and how it is also affecting your behavior. That is why they are talking about, how it impacts your menstrual cycle, like, premenstrual stress, right? Especially hormonal imbalance can cause a lot of problem. Now, current problem common among women. Anybody has any idea? Very simple. So many women face the problem because of this hormonal imbalance, right? Anybody else? Any idea? Thyroid, you're familiar with. Hyperthyroidism, you're familiar with.
PCOS.
Yeah, very good. PCOD, right? Polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a very common. What is the symptoms? It is a scanty flow of blood, right? You don't have periods regularly. Sometimes you are missing your periods. You're, gaining weight, and then you're feeling low. You can feel depressed. You can feel tired. So like that. So when you read the details in each paragraph, it is given paragraph wise, right? You read up each one, you will have a better understanding. Okay. So because with the given time, we have to make sure that we complete the syllabus. Okay. Are you with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So now if you have really anything specific question, you can mail me. I already given you my email ID. And then last time somebody had asked me, sent me a mail, and I responded to the person, right? They wanted to know about the model question papers, and I suggested that at the end of every chapter, there are model questions, there is checking progress, and there is also a summary. So if you are learning that well, I don't think you should have any problem. There is nothing like separate model question. Every chapter has a model questions. So just follow the chapters, read up the lessons, and you make sure that you are able to answer those model questions. That only. Out of the syllabus, I'm sure they will not give any questions. Okay? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So we are on unit number 6, nature and nurture controversy or behavior. This earlier also in other chapters, we have talked a little bit about it, but not the details, right? So now in this chapter, what are we going to do? We are going to distinguish between what is the nature and nurture, right? Which means whether behavior is inborn, that is nature, right? Naturally, I am like this, okay? Naturally, I get very angry. Naturally, I have a problem, whatever. What is nature? Nature talks about the environment. That means the kind of environment that I given has impacted my behavior, okay? So for those who do not know what I'm talking about and where I'm reading, it is on page number 78, okay? And the objective of this lesson is to distinguish between nature and nurture, explain some basic principles of hereditary, analyze the relative influence of hereditary and environment, both on behavior, okay? So this is what is the purpose of the lesson, okay? So the earliest topic of debates on psychology, whether human behavior is inborn or acquired through experience, this is known as the nurture-nature controversy. The nature view holds that the human beings enter the world with inborn store of knowledge and abilities. This is also known as nativism. The nurture views hold that the human intellect or knowledge may present at birth, but gets shaped by experiences. This is also known as empiricism, right? In all living organisms, the traits or the characteristics from the parents to offsprings is passed on through the genes, which is called as hereditary, known as hereditary. Okay. Now, human beings differ greatly in their thoughts, feelings, traits, behavior, which is very obvious, right? All of us are very, very unique and different because of the kind of thoughts we have, feelings we have, traits we have, personality we have, and behavior we have. However, the causes behind these large individual differences are much less obvious. Why human beings differ so greatly in important traits of behavior? There are two major answers to these important questions that has been proposed. Now, according to that, first behavior is largely determined by hereditary, right? So like I may have certain characteristics that has come from my gene, maybe my height, my weight, the color of the skin or the type of hair, etc., right? The supporters of this view hold the behavior is mainly influenced by the genetic factors inherited by the parents. According to the second behavior, they say it is influenced by the environmental factors, right? The supporters of this view hold that whether or not genetic potential determines behavior depends on environmental conditions. However, many contemporary psychologists believe that behavior is influenced by complex interaction of both hereditary and environment. Are you with me till here? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. This is all about the nature and the nurture debate, right? I'm on page number 79, okay, 6.2. Okay. So this nature and nurture controversy, okay? This holds the view that human beings enter the world with inborn storage of knowledge, as we have seen before, okay? Which is also called nativism, right? In the 17th century, Descartes supported the nature view. Now, what did he say? By arguing that some ideas such as God, about self, geometric axioms are innate. The nurture view holds that the knowledge is acquired through experiences and interaction with the world. The 17th century British philosopher John Locke is a strong supporter of the nurture view. According to Locke, at birth, the human mind is a tabula rasa, a blank state, which means a blank state, on which experiences are imprinted as the individual matures. This is also known as empiricism. The nature-nurture controversy, though is centered around relevant problems, totally ignored the important question. The first question is the role of the total organism, which is more than just its genes, right? Because it is only focusing on the gene component, especially the nature one. It is not looking at the other aspects of the organism in the body. Secondly, it does not concern itself with the lifelong and continuous interaction taking place between the total organism and the environment. What is more important is the actual relationship between the environment and the growing organism as a continuity, right? So as we keep growing, the organism that keep changing in the body, the environment that changing in the body, all this together influences our behavior. Okay. So although some psychologists argue that human thought, feeling, behavior results primarily from biology or primary experience, most psychologists takes a more integrated approach. That is, they acknowledge the biological process, that is, that behavior is influenced by the genes, that hereditary or processes that happens in the brain affecting the thoughts, feelings, and behavior. But they say experiences also leaves its mark too. The structural psychologists, starting from Wundt or Tichenor, attempted to study the organism isolating from the environment. The functional psychologists assumed the interaction and viewed the organism adjusting or adapting to its environment with little control or over control. The classical behaviorists views that organisms as helpless entity, totally susceptible to environmental influence. Social learning theorists, to a large extent, agreed with the behaviorists and tended to look at organism as a reflection of the society. A common trend underlying this view was to regard the organism and the environment as the two distinct or entities interacting with each other. The current interest among the psychologists is not whether nature or nurture shapes human thoughts, feelings, or behavior, but rather nature and nurture combine to influence the human behavior. Okay. So here you see how different psychologists are viewing, right, on this whole debate of nurture and nature. And here they have given us examples of how Wundt viewed, how the structuralist theologists view, how the functional psychologists view, and how this classical theologists. No, there are different kind of psychological thinkers. Yeah, what is nurture? Nurture is related to the environment, right? The environment that can influences my behavior.
कॉल करे थे अभी.
Sorry. Yes, somebody said something. Any problem, students? Somebody said something by mistake. Okay, fine. So somebody asked, what is nature? Nature is related to the environment that we grow in. As we know that nature is something that is inborn, that is comes with that in the genes, that is hereditary, right? So nurture is how we are nurtured in this kind of environment, right? The kind of interactions that we have with other people, right? The whole environment that we grow in, right? So psychologists, what they say, they are combining both. Our behavior is not influenced only by the only by our nature. For example, they say, okay, by nature, in the whole family, everybody has addictions. Maybe the alcoholic addiction is running in the family. It is coming in the genes. There can be talks like that. But there is also a possibility, despite that, if the person is put in a very, very healthy environment, right, where the person is not allowed, where the person is not allowed or given exposure to drinks, and who's been taught the values and is very consciously making the right choices, the person can change. It is not the kind of nature that has come with them need not have to continue. So that is what the psychologist says. They say that it takes both the nature and the nurture to, for the behavior to be influenced. Yes, you are with me? By large, all human-born children behave alike, but they grow as individual differences appear even as they further grow. Increase in both similarities and differences. While increasing similarities may be attributed to the factors in the environment such as social, political, and economic conditions of the society, increasing experiences, etc. Right? In this situation, which makes the task of psychology difficult, over the years, researchers in psychology have tried to develop two types of laws. laws which explain generality and similarity of behavior, and laws and principles which explain group differences and individual differences in behavior. These set of laws are complementary. Those aspects of psychology which deal with the first set of law are brought under the term general psychology and the latter under differential psychology. But a complete understanding of behavior depends on integrating of this both aspects, right? So when we have studying psychology, you will find they are divided into two different sets. One is the general psychology, another one is the differential psychology, right? Okay. Now, what are the basic principles of hereditary, right? Hereditary is something that is inborn, that is something that is come with us, something that is related to the genes. Okay. The process of passing of traits, I am on page number 80 now, right? I'm moving from 79 to 80. The process of passing traits from parents to children is called heredity. It is possible because of the genes present in the chromosomes. Though the offspring of the species may resemble very closely to the parents, but they never resemble exactly with them. Okay. So, in other words, each species has individuality or uniqueness. Okay. Each species is recognized by its specific morphological, physiological, and behavioral characteristics. For example, each person has certain peculiar characteristics by which he or she is easily recognized by other persons. The difference in the hereditary constitution of the individuals of species is known as hereditary variations or genetic variation. Each one of us are special due to hereditary makeup. The psychological principle must be applied cautiously and with awareness that mechanism responsible for the person's behavior may exist in diminished form or may not present in the other person. The field of psychology undertakes the task of studying or clarifying the role of inheritance in the development of behavioral characteristics is called the behavior genetics. Many physical characteristics, right, which is given here very clearly, height, hair, eye color, and like are inherited, right? Behavioral genetics are interested in the degree to which psychological characteristics, including mental ability, that is the temperament, the emotional stability, are transmitted from one parent to the offspring. However, the environmental conditions have a lot to do with the way a particular genetic factor is expressed in the individuals he or she matures. We shall begin our discussion in inherited abilities with the examination of the most basic mechanism of heredity. Okay. So what is hereditary? It is to do with the characteristics of that is being coming from the parent to us, right? Which is passed on from the genes from one generation to the other generation present in the chromosomes. Okay. So here there are given you answers. You can read up the question answers easily. What is hereditary? You can see 29, 79. Okay. And what is the gene? We will now study about. When we study about the chromosome, we'll have a basic understanding of what a gene is. Okay. I am on page number 80. Chromosomes and genes. Inside the nucleus of each cell in the human body, the chromosomes are present. Okay. So what are the chromosomes? They are present inside the nucleus of each cell in the human body. Okay. Chromosomes are thread-like structures inside the nucleus of the cell. Each chromosome consists of protein with a single molecule of deoxyribonucleic acid called the DNA. The chromosomes comes from the Greek word chromo means color and soma means body. Scientists gave this name to chromosomes because they are cell structures or bodies that are stained by color dyes in the research. The chromosomes appear in pairs and that carries the organism's gene. A gene is a fundamental unit of heredity located in the specific point on a chromosome. Human beings contain 23 pairs or 46 chromosomes, right? The chromosomes are very important. The human chromosomes are of two types, namely autosomes and allosomes. What are these autosomes and allosomes? Autosomes are somatic chromosomes and they control the body characteristics other than sex, right? They control the body characteristics other than sex. They are 22 pairs, generally represented as 22AA. Allosomes are the sex chromosomes. They control sexual characteristics. The allosomes are of two types, namely X chromosomes and Y chromosomes. Human female contain two XX chromosomes in the 23rd pair of chromosomes, and male contains one X chromosome and one Y chromosomes. Okay, this is very important as we keep reading. The genes, either individually or in a combination, produce particular characteristics in each person. While some genes are responsible for the development of system common to all members of human species, that is the heart, circulatory system, brains, lungs, and so forth, other control the characteristics that make each human unique, such as facial configuration, right? Our face is there, okay? Height, eye color, and the like. The child's sex is also determined by a particular combination of genes. The gene that determines the appearance of a character or a trait is called a dominant gene. The gene that is dormant, that are not destroyed, but which can't produce a trait in the presence of a dominant gene, is called a recessive gene. The phenomenon by which one trait appears and the other doesn't, even though the genes for both the parents, is called dominance. Consider, for example, a tall and a dwarf. Dwarf means, you know, no? Which is a stunted growth, short, for two alternatives of a trait height. A person grows tall if two dominant genes or one dominant and one recessive gene for the trait are present. The dominant genes for the tall are symbolically represented as capital TT and capital T and small t. A person can grow short when two recessive genes for dwarfness are present. The recessive genes for dwarfness are symbolically represented as small tt. If we take height as a trait, tall is dominant over the dwarf. Okay, sex determination in human beings. Now you see there is a box. I am on page number 81. Can you see the box? Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
You will find the human chromosomes and they have depicted you how the chromosomes are, you know, looking. 23 pairs of chromosome, 22 pairs of autosome and one pair of sex chromosomes.
Autosome
Right?
means, ma'am?
Sorry?
Autosome means?
Autosomes. Yeah, we just talked about allosomes and autosomes, right? Let us come back here. All
Somatic chromosomes control the body character.
yeah, autosomes are somatic chromosomes and they control the body characteristics of the sex. That is, they determine whether the baby that is going to be born is a female or a male, right? Okay. So we move on to 6.3.2, that is a sex determination in the human beings. Sex is a character and it has two alternatives, namely maleness or femaleness. The development of the organism into male or female is called sex determination. In human beings, the sex of the offspring is determined by the 23rd pair of the chromosome. Female possesses two similar sex chromosomes known as the XX chromosomes. Female produce only one type of gametes or egg that contains a single chromosome. The organisms producing only one type of gametes are called the homogametic sex. The male contains two dissimilar sex chromosomes in the 23rd pair. They are known as the X and the Y chromosomes. They produce two types of gametes or sperms. One type of sperms carry the X chromosomes and another type carry the Y chromosomes. The organism producing dissimilar gametes is called the heterogametic. At the time of fertilization, the mother contributes the egg carrying the X chromosomes, the only type that she has to offer, right? And the father contributes a sperm by carrying the X or the Y chromosome. When the sperm carrying X chromosome fuses with the egg having an X chromosome, a newborn baby is born. That is the female, because both are carried the X chromosomes. If the sperm carrying the Y chromosome fuses with the egg, the young one is the male. In the human beings, male or the father determines the sex of the child. But not knowing the truth, many men in some cultures blame their wives for the failure to provide him with a male child. Yeah, this is very common, right? We hear lot of people telling that the woman is responsible for the birth of the child, which is a male or a female. But when we look at this way, how the chromosomes work in the body of the man or a woman, right? The chromosomes that carried by the woman, if it is X, and fuses with the X chromosome of the man who's carrying the sperm, it will result in a girl baby, and vice versa. If the woman is carrying the X chromosome and fuses with the Y chromosome of the man, it results in the male child. Okay, so this is kind of an understanding we have, that they have already given us the figures here on page number 82. When you are free, just go through it and learn to read it again very slowly and gradually, and try to understand the concept. See, we cannot give another name for chromosomes. We cannot give other names for the scientific names that is used. We have to learn it up as it is. Okay, so learn it up properly and you will be able to answer questions related to hereditary and environmental determinism. Okay, the sperm and the ova, the male and the female sex pulse or gametes, contain only 23 chromosomes. Thus, when they join and form a fertilized woman from which a new human being will develop, the full number of 46 chromosomes is attained. For each of us, then, half of our genetic material comes from the mother and half from the father. The total number of genes in each human chromosomes is about 1,000, perhaps higher. Because the number of genes is high, two human beings, even siblings, are extremely unlikely to inherit the exact same set of genes. The only exception is identical twins or monozygotic twins. The monozygotic twins or identical twins come from fertilization of one egg and one sperm. The fertilized embryo, right? The fertilized embryo then splits into two, which usually shares the same chromosomes or exactly the same genes. The identical twin pair can be a boy-boy, or it can also be a girl-girl. This is not true for a dyskotic twins or a fraternal twins, who develop from the fertilization of two different eggs with two different sperm. Dyskotic twin pairs can be girl-girl or boy-boy or girl-boy. Dyskotic twins are no more alike and genetically ordinary siblings. Okay. Yeah, the basic mechanism explains why the persons who are related resemble one another more than persons who are totally unrelated, and also why the closer the familiar tie between the individuals and more similar when they tend to be physically. Thus, siblings, children of the same parents, tend to be more more alike than cousins or children of siblings. Because identical twins share the same genes, they are usually similar in appearance. They are surprisingly similar in the respect such as intelligence, temperament, religious belief, etc., compared to the non-identical twins. Okay, so we move on to role of hereditary and behavior in environment. So what is the role of these two? Most people are neither tall or nor short, bright, dull, brave, or fearful. Traits such as height, intelligence, and emotionality do not fall in distinct categories, but distributed over a broad range, with most individuals located near the middle. Human beings differ greatly in their thoughts, feelings, traits, and behavior. Is obvious, right? So why then human beings differ so greatly in important traits, and what are the factors that influences the behavior? There are two major answers to this important questions that has been proposed, right? The first one is behavior is largely determined by hereditary. The supporters of the view hold that behavior is mainly influenced by genetic factors inherited from the parents. According to the second, sharply contrasting view, behavior is influenced by the environmental factors. The supporters of this view hold that whether or not genetic potential determines the behavior depends on the environmental condition. At present, many psychologists with behavior is influenced by complex interaction of the both. That is the hereditary and the behavior. Now, evidence for the influence of hereditary on behavior. Several lines of research have been offered. I am on page number 83. Okay. Support for the role of hereditary or behavior. The most important among them are selective breeding studies and twin studies. Okay. There are studies done, right, to prove that there is evidence for the influence of hereditary on behavior. One method of studying the inheritance of a particular trait in animals in selective breeding. In selective breeding, animals that are high or low in certain behavior or physical trait are mated with each other, right? Example, several decades ago, Robert Tryon studied the inheritance of learning ability in rats. Tryon identified rats as bright or dull, right? Depending on how well they performed in the maze, those rats who made less number of errors in maze performance were labeled as a bright one. And those rats who made more number of errors were labeled as a dull. See, these kind of experiments are very, very common among the psychologists who experimented with the animals like rats, right? Rats or dogs or cats and stuff like that. So here we see how Tryon experimented with the rats. Once the bright rats had been segregated from the dull rats, bright males were mated with the bright females, whereas the dull males were mated with the dull females. The offspring of these matings were tested on the same maze. And again, the distinction were made about the brightest of the bright and the dullest of the dulls. Okay. So this went on to prove that hereditary plays a very important role on the behavior of the person. The strategy was repeated for generation after generation. The result of the experiment revealed that there were fairly consistent divergence of the maze performance between the bright rats and the dull rats over successive generations, at least through generation 7, at which point the difference stabilized. The results of the Tryon study point the possibility of hereditary traits, that is, certain abilities or behavioral tendencies may be passed from one generation to the next. The heritability of a trait refers to a difference among the individuals within a population and not a percentage of a trait within the individual. For example, the height from the heritability of 90% doesn't mean that 90% of your height comes from your genes and 10% comes from the environment. It means that 90% of the differences in the height among individuals observed in the population is due to genetic differences. Okay, so this is all about the selective breeding studies. Okay, there is another study called the twin studies. So let us learn about this. Selective breeding studies with people are obviously unethical. Therefore, twin studies and adoption studies provide a suitable alternative for understanding the role of the hereditary, right? The psychologists felt that this kind of study is not really ethical, right? So they thought another form of study would be a better alternative. So certain traits often run in families, but family members not only are linked genetically, but also share the same environment. If musical talent runs in the family, we don't know whether inheritability or parental emphasis on music is a primary influence. So some of alcoholic fathers are more likely than others to develop alcoholism. Do genetic tendencies or environmental conditions play a major role? In an effort to answer a question of this type, psychologists have turned to studies of twins, especially identical twins and the children who have been adopted. Identical twins develop from a single fertilized egg and therefore share exactly the same genes. Fraternal twins or non-identical twins develop from different egg cells and are no more alike genetically like ordinary siblings. Studies then compared identical twins with fraternal twins help sort out influence of hereditary and environment. The impact of genetic factors, for example, is suggested by a link between family relationship and measured IQ. In general, identical twins are similar to in intelligence than fraternal twins. Okay, so that's how this twins studies have been done, right? Where they see there is a relationship between the identical twin, non-identical twins, and the correlation between them, like how well they are how well we can see the traits that is in between these kind of twins. Identical twins are also found to be more similar than the fraternal twins in some personality characteristics and susceptibility to schizophrenia. Family studies show that there is a hereditary predisposition for schizophrenia. Relatives of people with schizophrenia are more likely to develop the disorder from families that are free of schizophrenia. The risk of developing schizophrenia is found to be the function of how closely an individual is genetically related to a person with schizophrenia. The identical twins of schizophrenia is 3 times more likely than the fraternal twins to develop schizophrenia and 46 times more likely than the unrelated persons to develop the disorder. Okay, so the relationship between the hereditary and schizophrenia, how the studies have been done. Are you with me in this? Yeah, are you getting difficult to understand?
No,
You want to know what schizophrenia, you are aware of what schizophrenia is? Yes? Any?
No,
Yeah. Your voice is breaking, ma. Okay, let me tell you, schizophrenia is a mental health issue. It's a mental illness. Schizophrenia is a mental illness where the person has symptoms of hallucinations and delusions. Hallucinations, they start hearing certain sounds. They start, listening to some conversations which you and I normally cannot hear. And sometimes they can also see certain things that they are not able to see, right? So sometimes schizophrenic runs in the families. That's what the topic talks about, hereditary. Hereditary means sometimes if there is a mental illness in a family, right? Maybe the grandfather was schizophrenic. There is all possibility the father turns out to be a schizophrenic. And if the father turns out to be a schizophrenic, there's also a possibility that the son and the grandson and that whole generations, maybe that gene may be passed on from one to another, but only when it is in a predisposed condition. And the environmental factors also contribute. See, for example, there could be depression running in the family, right? But if my environment is very positive, right? And if I'm doing everything possible to ensure that I am mentally healthy, there is no possibility of me getting depression or schizophrenia. But then when I am going through a lot of stress and I do not know how to deal with this kind of stress, since in my family there is already this kind of illnesses that are running through the genes, there is a possibility that impact me. Yes? Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So the possibility of getting the schizophrenia or depression, just like, if my mother has diabetes, my grandmother had diabetes, it is running in the genes. But if I know how I can handle diabetes and if I regulate, my behavior, I regulate my eating patterns, I do exercises and I ensure that I cut down on sugar and salt and all this. So when I do all this, what will happen? There is all possibility that the diabetes need not be, impacting my behavior. Why? Because the environment that I'm living in is helping me to not only cope, but it is also making me resilient to deal with that. Yeah. Same way, when there is a mental illness too running in the family, and when we know that in the family, this kind of things are there, and I am able to deal with it in the given environment, right? And also we have now so much of scientific advance. We have even medication available for schizophrenia. We have medication available for depression. We have medications available for other mental illnesses like bipolar and stuff like that. So medicines in the combination of diet, exercise, and positive mental attitude can help the person to come out of it. Yeah. Yeah. The studies on adopted children suggest that genetic influence may be stronger as people age. And adopted children grow older, we might expect them become more similar to their adopted parents in traits such as general cognitive ability and verbal ability, and similar to biological parents. You understand what cognitive and verbal means? Yeah. Cognitive is thought processes, okay? Thinking, right? And verbal is the usage of words, right? In conversations. Contrary to this expectation, as adopted children approach 16, they become more similar to the biological parents. Studies of adopted male children with similar socio-economic backgrounds found that they, as become adults, likelihood of criminal conviction among adopted males increased as a function of number of convictions of the biological parents. Because the individuals were reared in an environment away from their biological parents, the imitation of criminal activity was not the issue. Rather, it seemed that some transmitted by the criminal parents increase the chances that the children will engage in criminal behavior. So we know that the behaviors are learned behavior. And then when children keep watching the behavior of the elders, right, there is all possibility that they will imitate those kind of behaviors, just as they are given the example of the criminal parents, which increase the chances of the children to engage in criminal behavior. The other studies suggest the innate tendencies of the perception of depth or distance. Perhaps the most intriguing research on the topic is employed on the apparatus known as a visual cliff. A visual cliff is an apparatus used to test perception of depth. The visual cliff consists of a sheet of glass covering a checkboard pattern. The pattern is right under the glass on one side, but far below on the other end. Thus, although glass covers both sides, the floor seems to be much farther away on the deep end. Studies conducted on children using this apparatus reveal that when 6 to 7 months old infants are placed on the visual cliff, they refuse to cross the deep side, even to reach their mothers. Such findings suggest that by the time infants can move about, they already possess the innate ability to perceive distance or depth. With regard to language development, Noam Chomsky holds that the brain is pre-wired for learning. That is a language learning. A view that is consistent with the finding that certain brain areas, Broca areas and the Wernicke's area, specialize in language development. Chomsky is not arguing that the humans are born with innate language. Rather, he suggests that they have an innate ability to extract the grammatical rules for the language. Evidence of influence on the environment and behavior. Now, what are they? The inherited potential with which the individual enters the world is very much influenced by the environment the infant encounters. One example is diabetes, which I already mentioned. The tendency to develop diabetes is hereditary, although the exact method of transmission is unknown. In diabetes, the pancreas does not produce enough insulin or burn carbohydrates and thus provide energy for the body. Scientists assume that the genes determine the production of insulin, but people who carry the genetic potential for diabetes do not always develop the disease. If one identical twin has diabetes, the other twin develops the disorder in only half the case. Not all of the environmental factors contribute to the diabetes are known, but one variable that is fairly visible established is the obesity. An overweight person requires more insulin to metabolize carbohydrates than a thin or a less weight person. Consequently, an individual who carries the genes for diabetes is more likely to develop the disorder if she or he is overweight. That means the possibilities are there, which can be controlled. Okay, so this is how environment influences the behavior. Studies on human intelligence provide convincing evidence concerning the role of environmental factors. I am on page number 86. Okay, in terms of enrichment, many studies suggest removing children from sterile or restricted environment and placing them in more favorable settings may greatly enhance the intellectual growth. Another source evidence indicate improvement in the quality of education can serve to raise IQ level of individuals. Watson to Skinner, right? Psychologists from James Watson to B.F. Skinner emphasize the role of learning or the environment on behavior. Skinner, for instance, has convincingly demonstrated that the behavior is influenced by environmental factors such as food, water, heat, electric shock, money or praise, criticism, etc. According to him, it is the consequences of this response that determines the fate of the response. It is assumed that any behavior which is rewarded is more likely to be repeated. According to Skinner, several bad behaviors such as smoking, alcoholism, drug addiction, gambling are all influences or learning by the environmental condition. Okay, so Skinner was a person who believed that environment plays a great role in the formation of the behavior, which in turn becomes the habits. Now he mentioned here about alcoholism, gambling, All this, these are all environmental factors. People look at people who are doing this stuff and they model it and they learn it, right? So that is what he says. And then he also talks about rewards. According to Skinner, when you reinforce a good behavior, when a child behaves well, when the child listens to you, obedient, and then when you reward the child repeats that behavior, right? So he spoke about the reward and punishment kind of a thing, right? Many phobic reactions such as fear of water, that is a hydrophobia, fear of darkness, that is a nyctophobia, fear of strangers, xenophobia, etc. are all influenced by learning experiences. Similarly, person's learning ability, a distinct human quality, is based partly on innate mechanism, but the type of language one acquires, speaks, depends on the environment in which he or she grows. If the person is brought up in England, he's learned English, and the person lives in India, he learns to speak Hindi. So whatever is the environment, in whichever environment we learn certain things, either a language, right? We learn to become proficient, we learn to speak well. A social learning theorist, that is Bandura, Albert Bandura, suggests that much of what we do and how we do is based on our observation and imitation of other behavior known as models. The models can either be those we encounter in real life or those we view on television and in movies. So Albert Bandura theory is very common. Albert Bandura, he talks about how children model looking at the older persons, like, maybe a hero or a heroine or some villain, watching the movies, or the person's elders who are surrounding them, right? And they are very good in observing. And then this observational learning plays a major role in the form of behavior. A child watches his parents washing dishes, do the laundry, cook meals, and go to jobs each morning. From their such experiences, the child forms an impression that married couples share responsibilities of running a household. A large body of evidence suggests that aggression may indeed be learned through observation and influenced by environmental or situation factors. Now, what is this aggression? Aggression is the person who is, showing the anger in a physical way, like, maybe beating, or in a very aggressive way, throwing things out, harming the person, literally. Okay. So some of the aggression, like, some people who are very aggressive, right? And if the children are brought up, in that kind of an environment, an aggressive father or an aggressive mother, the child learns and turns out to be aggressive, because the child realizes or learns that that is the only way to, depict anger, or the only way to show his or her anger. So aggression is also a learned behavior, and which is coming from observation influenced by the environment or situational factors. Children exposed to media, violence, or an adult model who behave aggressively to handle interpersonal difficulties are found to show increased tendency to engage in acts of aggression and violence. So we see a lot of studies that are done, where children watching a lot of these movies which are too much of violence, too much of, beating, and too much of killing, too much of murder, all these things also, impact the mind of the child. Like, the people, the researchers have shown, and, studies have done, like how the children constantly watching violence impact them and makes them violent, right? And makes them aggressive too. A person's locus of control, that is a belief that is internal, external factors determine the outcome of the behavior, is influenced by learning experiences. Internals are those who believe the cause of outcome of their behavior are present within themselves. They believe that whatever happens to them in their lives, either good, bad, or success or failure, is due to their own effort, ability, efficiency, and hard work. So this is the locus of internal control. Whatever they have taken charge, the responsibility that is coming from within. In contrast, the external are those who believe that whatever happens to them in their lives is due to external factors such as God, destiny, luck, or fate. According to Rota, a social learning theorist, individual differences in beliefs in internality or externality are presumably learned. For example, a child lives in a family environment that encourages activities that results in rewards. The belief grows in that it is possible to make good things happen and to avoid the bad. If one's learning experience involves unpredictable rewards and punishment from others, the belief grows events in life are beyond one's control. Many studies reveal that the person's locus of control, that is the belief in internality or externality, is related to the number of quite different behavior. For example, internals tend to take better care of themselves, are more likely to use helmets and seat belts while driving automobiles, and are more likely to engage in physical fitness activities than the externals. Human behavior is influenced by hereditary and also environment, but which contributes more to the human behavior. Whether hereditary or environment is a difficult question to answer. Therefore, it is only reasonable to conclude that human behavior is influenced by complex interaction, that is the hereditary and the environment. Okay, so here ends the lesson about the debate of nurture nature and also about the influences of hereditary and environment on the behavior. Again, you have your questions here, right? You can check your progress. Summary is given, and then model answers are also there. Okay, model questions are given at what are twin studies. You refer to page number 84, write short notes on chromosomes. Very detailed thing is given in page 80. Explain basic principle of hereditary. Refer to page 79. You will get all information on hereditary. And then the questions that needs to be answered in 20 lines are hereditary and determining behavior. It is on page number 83. And role of environmental factors influencing behavior on page number 86. So my dear students, and then you see there are glossary, and in the glossary all the meanings are given, very clearly and very beautifully. So I again recommend and encourage you to go through, right? Today we have completed by today block 2, and we have completed unit 5 and 6, right? So go through each and every unit, and you'll be able to understand, and then you refer back to the questions. And in case you want to ask me any question on any particular thing, I've already given you my email ID, so kindly write to me and I will definitely respond to you. So I end the class here. Thank you for listening. Have a great weekend. See you tomorrow. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, madam.
Welcome.
Lakshmi Patel, where is she? She is not here, I guess.
What is the